begin with breaking news.
At breaking news tonight out of the Middle East, where President Donald Trump says Iran's supreme leader was killed in a coordinated attack with Israel. Thank you for joining us at 5. I'm Cecil Hannibal. This satellite image shows smoke billowing from the supreme leader's compound. Damage seen in the image appears to show that several buildings in the compound were hit by strikes after the U.S. and Israel launched those joint attacks. It's unclear if the Iranian supreme leader was in the compound at the time. These strikes from the U.S. and Israel mark one of the most consequential military escalations in decades. Our White House correspondent Christopher Salas is live on the North Lawn tonight with the latest. Christopher.
Yeah, Cecil, and the big question is what happens next in regards to this conflict? Does it spread to a broader regional war? Now, the president said despite the fact that the United States did kill the supreme leader in one of those strikes, these strikes are going to continue throughout the week and beyond.
The United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated.
U.S. Central Command releasing this video of the strikes, showing missiles launching and targets being hit overnight. The Pentagon says the operation targeted Iranian missile sites, air defenses, and Revolutionary Guard facilities. The president says the strikes also killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. On social media, he called him one of the most evil people in history and said other leaders were also killed in the attack. The president said these strikes will continue, quote, throughout the week or as long as necessary. Iran has fired back on U.S. and Israeli targets in the region. These photos show President Trump at his Mar-a-Lago resort as the strikes were carried out in coordination with Israel. The president framed the strike as the result of decades of conflict with Iran, saying diplomacy failed and this action was necessary to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost and we may have casualties. That often happens in war, but we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission.
Well, you hear the president there use that word war. He also urged Iranians to, quote, take back their government. As lawmakers here in D.C. call for briefings, and again, the question tonight, does this spill into a broad regional war? Back to you.
That's what people are asking. I think they're also asking, Christopher, the timing of this. Why did these strikes happen now?
Yeah, Cecil, so the president says that Iran was rebuilding its nuclear program after the U.S. struck it last year. The president also claims that Tehran was advancing missile capabilities that could eventually threaten American interests in the region. Now, critics note there's no publicly released intelligence showing that Iran could either strike the U.S. homeland or impact U.S. interest in the region with that nuclear program. Again, they're also warning that this could significantly escalate. It's even something that the president acknowledged could happen on Friday when he was taking questions from reporters, saying when there's war, there's risk. Meanwhile, the White House also said that, look, we tried to negotiate with Iran, and those negotiations failed. This strike was necessary.
And Christopher, also, we want to know kind of what happens next from here. Do we have any idea?
Cecil, again, that's the major question tonight. So the president says that this bombing is going to continue throughout the week and potentially even longer, so an indefinite timeline there. Here at home, it's important to note the FBI has raised its posture, putting counterterrorism teams on high alert for any potential threats, even sending some warnings out on social media. That's happening as the Department of Homeland Security has a funding lapse right now, with lawmakers saying this situation happening in Iran makes it all that more urgent to find appropriations, get an agreement to fund Homeland Security.
Reporting from the White House, that was Christopher Salas. Thank you, Christopher. Iranian state media says dozens were killed after a girls' school was hit by a strike. A regional governor says at least 63 students were killed. Another 92 were hurt. With more trapped under the rubble, in a social media post, the Iranian foreign minister wrote the strike occurred when the school was packed with young pupils. A U.S. Central Command spokesperson says they take these reports seriously. He also said the protection of civilians is of utmost importance. They continue to take precautions to minimize the risk of unintended harm. The strikes on Iran have sparked widespread flight delays and cancellations across the Middle East. Passengers gathered at Dubai International Airport on Saturday as carriers scrambled to adjust schedules. Israel, Iran, Iraq, and Jordan closed their airspace following those attacks. Airlines suspended or rerouted flights with tracking maps showing aircrafts avoiding large sections of the region. American Airlines suspended its flights between Doha, Qatar, and Philadelphia. United Airlines announced it will temporarily cancel flights from the U.S. to Dubai and Tel Aviv. Those tensions trickling down here locally in our area as well, with protests sparking retaliation to those attacks. KCRA3's Denson Cortez is live in the newsroom tonight with reaction from people in our area. Denson, what are we hearing from folks?
Cecil, the effects of those strikes from earlier today being felt here locally in our region. Many questioning, like what Christopher mentioned, what do we do now?
The people, united, will never be divided.
Thousands of miles away from the latest Middle East conflict, protests taking to the streets after the recent U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran.
The people, united, will never be defeated.
The strikes deemed Operation Epic Fury and Roaring Lion, happening just after sunrise in western Iran, sending shockwaves across the globe.
There's absolutely no justification for it. It's simply a big bully trying to show that he can still make trouble.
The military action comes after months of rising tensions, including stalled nuclear negotiations and growing conflict between Iran and Israel in the region. Now fears here locally what happens next.
I don't think the government is wonderful in Iran at all, but that doesn't, us going in there invading isn't about that. And it's not, I think it could create chaos.
Some local leaders echoing that concern, including Governor Newsom and Senator Adam Schiff, questioning the administration's lack of congressional approval.
Iran's power is, I think, best understood through a lens of containing Iranian influence for the purpose of how that plays out in the broader international scene.
KCRA3 sitting down with Dr. Sahar Razavi, director of the Middle Eastern Studies Center at Sacramento State, sharing how we got to this point.
Iran abandoned its nuclear weapons program by all evidence that we have in the early 2000s, and the Supreme Leader issued a fatwa or a religious declaration saying that nuclear weapons are contrary to Islamic law. This is in contrast to Donald Trump's statements even from yesterday.
How has this influenced the United States policymaking recently?
We've seen a maximum pressure campaign on the part of the Trump administration, both the first and the second Trump administrations, and that maximum pressure campaign has increased a lot of economic pressure. That does not necessarily convert to pressure directly on the regime.
So, Doctor, we've been getting messages. It's a simple question. Are we on a path to full-blown war?
If you had asked me that 2 days ago, I would have said something different probably than what I'm saying now. But I think all signs point to a very serious war. I think we are going to see a regional war if these preliminary reports from Israel turn out to be true, that the Supreme Leader has been killed. That is going to have, I believe, the opposite effect of what they intended it.
And the president posting on Truth Social about the death of Iran's Supreme Leader in this strike. I asked the expert we spoke with on what's the common sentiment amongst Iranians in Sacramento and California overall, Cecil. She tells me this is a spike in national sentiment, even if there are Iranians against the war in general. Cecil?
Denson, thank you. Celebrations underway in Los Angeles after Iran's Supreme Leader was killed. This video showing people dancing in the streets during a rally. Iranians and Americans can be seen hugging each other, jumping in the air, and thanking Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Demonstrators across the country are also gathering to condemn the U.S. involvement in today's military action in Iran. Protesters in the nation's capital took to the streets, some waving Iranian flags. Similar scene in Boston, Massachusetts. Demonstrators holding signs opposing our country's role in the strike. A large crowd of people also gathering in Times Square, New York City, also in Orlando and New Orleans.